This podcast is brought to you by Penji. Penji is a creative subscription service that gives you access to pre-vetted, agency-trained creatives from all over the world. From graphic design to illustrations to social media management and web development, it's all included for one monthly price. It's time to say goodbye to the hassle of searching for top-notch creative talent. With Penji, you get quality and consistency delivered right to your inbox every day, carefully crafted for you by humans. So meet your new creative team today. Head over to penji.co for more and enter the coupon code located within the podcast show notes.
Okay, Ray, what was the first concert that you attended?
Oh, you got me with this one. The first concert I ever attended was in Asbury Park, New Jersey. I was probably like 15, 16 years old. And I went to see, it was a really random group. It was Atmosphere, one of my favorite bands. And one of Bob Marley's kids, I think it was Damian Marley, and Slightly Stupid. It was like three different crowds coming together for one concert. And it was a vibe. It was a really good time.
So it was like three different groups?
Yeah, it's like reggae and hip hop and then like ska, you know? It's just like three different demographics, but it was cool how everybody was just like having a good time. It was like peak summer, so it was like a half outdoor venue. It was awesome. I think I got lucky with my first concert.
That's cool. How old are you?
How old was I?
Mhm.
I think 15 or 16. Yeah.
That's pretty cool. My first concert was for a Mexican band. Well, they were a group.
Yeah.
I don't know. You're probably not familiar with them. Their name was RBD.
Of course, dude. Soy
Yeah.
Mexicano. I'm Mexican. I live here right
Okay.
now. Of course I know RBD. That's peak
Yeah.
concert right there.
Yeah, I was 8 or 7 years old. I was super young. But I went to, like, a rich kids school for a little while before it
Yeah.
got really expensive. But like, I would, like, talk to a lot of, like, rich kids, and, one of those girls, she got me, like, free tickets to this band. They were coming. I live in El Salvador, and, like, they were coming here,
Yeah.
and she was like, "Let's go," and we went, and we were, like, huge fans because, like, the la telenovela was really big at the time.
Yeah.
And that was my first concert as a child.
That is awesome. For anybody who doesn't know RBD, it was like a manufactured group, like
Yeah,
working off of like boy bands. Like they were made in a lab, right? It was like 5 of
yeah,
them. They had a
yeah.
TV show, they had clothes and makeup, and like they made music that was like okay,
Yeah.
but it was all over the
Iconic
place.
music.
It was peak like early 2000s. That's great.
Yeah, I will drunk sing those songs.
Yeah, yeah,
To my
absolutely.
heart. Yeah,
Yeah.
no. They were super manufactured. Marketing success though, which is a great way to get us started to the
Yep.
20 Minute Podcast. Everyone, welcome. You guys know the drill. My name is Daniela, and I'm your host. Today, we have a great guest, Ray Nunez from Nunez. Hi, how are you doing, Ray?
Excellent, excellent. Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
I'm excited to have you too. I actually don't have a lot of Latino guests, so it's great for me because I feel like we need more representation, more diversity, and I'm really excited to have you on the episode today.
Absolutely. This will be our first Spanglish episode. I like it.
Yeah, first Spanglish, so viewers probably will have to get a lot of like subtitles just
We'll
to
get
get.
captions. We could get captions. We have the technology.
Yeah. So actually, the reason that I was really excited to have your agency is because um obviously fully managed talks a lot about we do a lot of agency, a lot of marketing work, and we talk with a lot of business owners from that kind of sphere. But you were probably the first one that we were looking into that kind of your whole like shtick, the whole thing was kind of being inclusive, and it's called the People's Agency, which I
Yep.
think is really cool, and just the whole thing of kind of having this sort of anti-racist, being inclusive to different cultures and all of that, and um, really resonated with me. And I wanted to ask you what made you want to kind of give it that spin of making it inclusive and have this whole thing around it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, the short answer is because it didn't exist, right? That did not exist anywhere else. So, my background is in design and marketing and fundraising. I worked in the nonprofit sector for a couple of years, and I realized, the agencies that were out there, all the big players that everybody like, was fighting to get internships at. when I was in school, like they didn't look like me. We knew that. But they were
Yeah.
not actually communicating to any diverse audiences. And if they were, it was performative, right? It was like on our behalf. I'll give you an example. Like I remember watching, it was a Super Bowl commercial. I was little. I was probably like 10, 11, and like the Super Bowl commercial, like made all the rounds because it was bilingual and it was like featuring like Latino actors, doing the thing. And I won't call them out by name. I don't want to get sued out here, but it was so disconnected, right? Like even the words that they used were like it was straight Google Translate in the form of an overproduced commercial. And, it was so funny to see like the advertising community at the time look at it as like, wow, how inclusive, the gold standard. But I guarantee you, and you can check the receipts, like nobody on that production team era Latino. Nobody spoke Spanish. Nobody understood the cultural connection. It was like so cheesy in the form of like mixing cultures. They had like Day of the Dead, and then they also had, like, arepas and tacos and sombreros, like, it was all of the stereotypes put together. And I'm like, "That's an obvious red flag," and I was too young to understand what that meant, but I've never forgotten that. And as a son of immigrants, as an immigrant myself, like, growing up, I was always the, unofficial translator, as I'm sure you have, similar experiences, going to the grocery store or the doctors or the school and having to translate for my parents or other Latinos who, like, weren't processing the language at the time. And that always kinda empowered me as, like, this is my superpower. I can bridge these 2 worlds, and then I think I took it too literally and made a whole career out of it. So now what we do is, working mostly with nonprofits, foundations, folks in the social impact sector, and it's all around multicultural, multilingual, and specifically focused on Latino audiences. Again, because there was nobody out there who was doing that.
So you obviously your main focus is Latino audiences, but I'm curious, do you work with other types of diverse cultures or is it mostly with the Latinos?
Yeah, I think recently we decided to double down and we made a whole separate mini agency called Doble Impact that's strictly focused on Latinos. But Nunez, the People's Agency as a whole, we're across the board. Our team is super diverse. Different cultures are represented. We have people from all over the world, and that means that we are also culturally competent and understanding of different diverse cultures. I'll give you one example. A couple years back, when the pandemic started, we were hired by the Department of Health to do a multilingual campaign. And this is why it's important, folks, to check a full scope before agreeing to something. Because when they said multilingual, they used the term bilingual, and that's two, right? So we defaulted to Spanish and we said, of course we could do it. Claro que sí. And then we get the full scope, and they're like, actually, these are 22 different languages and dialects. I'm like, what? I
So
can't even name
bilingual.
22 languages. Yeah, I'm like, I can't even name 22 languages. And of course, it had like the budget of one language, right? So we had to figure out how do we get folks on our team who can offer that lived experience perspective so we don't pull a Super Bowl commercial and we actually, use terminology that's relevant. And I won't lie, it was stressful because we had to be so, so, so considerate and so inclusive of so many factors. But I mean, the results spoke for themselves. Like this was about, getting folks to, vaccinate and like making sure that folks were staying healthy. This was peak 2020. And having it be in all those languages for the first time made such a difference. Like it didn't just translate something over a caption of a video. It was like, posters and signs at bodegas and grocery stores and laundromats. It was like targeted ads that were in, Haitian Creole for like a small zip code population that needed it in that language. Like it made such a difference to pay attention to that.
Yeah, I think a lot of people who I guess like not to like shit on Americans, but a little bit. Um I feel like because a majority of the population in America, who is not from kind of immigrant descent doesn't
Mhm,
speak other languages,
mhm.
I think the realization that knowing 2 languages really changes your cultural perspective.
Yeah.
Speaking a language is not just like saying the words, it's really just understanding a different culture because it's very embedded into a
Yeah.
culture. So, like language change can really affect how something is perceived.
Yeah. And we had folks who were like, why is the state wasting money on all these languages? Speak English. Like we heard all the comments, right? Every video we posted on social media had like, a whole bunch of trolls and a whole bunch of racists. But we understood that it wasn't just about like the ability to speak English versus another language. Like I'm obviously bilingual, I'm biliterate, but I have like certain things in my head that I process in one language or the other. I
Yeah.
count in English, but I'm thinking in Spanish, right? I'm
Yeah.
thinking of like music in Spanish, but I'm like thinking of movies in English. Like it's something that like folks who only speak one language don't even think about. Like my parents can speak it, they can write it, but they rather read it in Spanish, especially when it comes to legal information, health information, like stuff that's really serious. You don't wanna miss it. You don't wanna miss translation, right? You wanna
Yeah.
have it exactly how you understand it.
Yeah, my parents are the same. I feel like we moved to the US when I was about maybe 8 or 9. Um, and when we moved to America, we were actually there for only a couple of years, and then we moved back to El Salvador. But, I remember when we were there, I didn't speak any English at all because I had been living in El Salvador, and so I spoke mostly Spanish. My parents spoke English, but it was not their first language.
Mhm.
So it started off with kind of them being my translators, and I picked up the language super quickly because I was so young. Um, I learned it really fast, and then I started becoming the translator for them at some point. Um, because I realized that like, I spoke it way better and way faster than they did, and, also, like you said, I realized that my parents kind of for more important things, like, they
Yeah,
couldn't handle themselves in, like, daily conversation and probably, like, a transaction at the supermarket, but when it came to the really technical things
yeah,
and just more complicated things, especially as I kept getting older, I realized that they were just so much more comfortable with Spanish.
yeah.
Um, and I feel like I like you, I think in both languages. I feel like I'm at my most comfortable when I'm just, like, saying things, whatever language they come out of.
Yeah, como salga la canción, right? That's
Thank
just
God.
however it comes out.
If not, it's like if I have to, like sometimes I have to think, to kind of just get everything into one full sentence
Yep.
into one language. But if I can just speak, that's where I'm at my most comfortable.
I love that. I love that. Now that I live in Mexico again, I'm like facing the opposite where I defaulted to English. And now that I'm here, like there's technical stuff in Spanish that I'm learning for the first time. And like I can I'm very technical and like I understand a lot, but there's certain words that you've just never heard in the US because you never had to, right? Like a
Yeah.
mortgage. Like that's not something that like I just heard casually in, my living room.
Exactly.
Yeah, un crédito hipotecario. I was like,
Yeah.
that's what is that?
Yeah. Yeah, it's because I think I've also kind of, had my entire work life be in English, so I also feel like I mean, I can handle myself in both languages, but I also feel like there's, like, a thing where if you haven't heard these terms, you have to
Yeah.
kind of sit and be like, "What is that?"
Yeah.
To kind of get what it
How
means.
do I translate SEO? Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't know you were living in Mexico now, so you're in Mexico? I thought you were in the States.
Yeah, so we moved here about 2 years ago. It was like it was supposed to be like a 6-month thing, and, we fell in love with it. My wife is American, she's Irish and Italian, she's, from Jersey, and we lived in Rhode Island for the past 10 years, and most of our business is still operating in New England on the East Coast. But, when we got here and realized, like, this is the window in time, like, we got 2 little kids, this is when we could, like, really embed culture and embed values and embed language where they're still little enough to, like, understand it and process it, right? If we do this 20 years later, we might miss that opportunity to, like, make it meaningful. So, we said, "You know what? Let's sell everything we have. Our work is remote anyway. Let's just keep it going." And, knock on wood, it's been good. It's been working.
I love Mexico. I've been to Mexico a couple times, and every time I go, I always just wanna go back. It's
Yeah, come
really
hang out
fun.
whenever you want. You got a place to crash here.
Yeah, that's awesome. Which part are you in?
We are in San Miguel de Allende. So it's in the state of Guanajuato. We're about 4 hours west of Mexico City, 4 hours east of Guadalajara. We're, like, right in the center.
Yeah, you guys are, like, right in the center. I've been to Mexico City and Puebla mostly.
Beautiful.
Yeah, and I love Mexico, and like you said, I do think that, culture is very much embedded into you as a child. Um, I think the discussion that happens between the difference between Latin American kids happening, I think a lot of immigrant kids have that sort of kind of identity crisis where,
Oh
like,
yeah.
I'm not
Yeah.
American enough to be here, but I'm not
Yeah.
Mexican enough to be in Mexico or, like, wherever it is that they're
Yeah.
from.
Need that,
And
yeah. It's like it's the we all have it. We all get an identity
yeah,
crisis at some point.
it's like a whole thing, but I think, like, what happens is that you kind of what makes you feel so separated from the Latinos from Latin America is that an immigrant child doesn't understand truly what it is to be born in Latin America and kind of have your childhood there. It's that kind of lack of shared reality,
Yep.
which I think really kind of gives that child that identity crisis because you
Yep.
still have the reality of living in America as an immigrant, which the Latino child is not going to be able to relate to. That makes
Yeah.
sense.
100%. Yeah. All my life being like, growing up in a not very diverse place with not a lot of Latinos, let alone other Mexicans, I always had that of like feeling like I don't belong and identity and language and all that. And for some reason, I thought that like coming home, like I was born in Michoacan, I was born 4 hours from here, that it would be like an end to that feeling. But
Yeah, but
now I'm an immigrant in my own country. You know what I mean? Like
yeah.
I'm coming in with a totally different perspective of growing up, a perspective of doing business and politics and all that, because I didn't have the lived experience here. So that's never going to go away. And the moment I like accepted that, it's when you can sleep at night that you're comfortable.
Yeah, I get it. I totally understand it because I was pretty, like I was, like, very much like a nomad child. We moved around a lot in my childhood, and I still ended up living most of my childhood here in El Salvador, but then I moved away for college to Taiwan, and then I moved back 2 years ago. So it's been kind of like the same reality of just always having to feel like I never stop feeling like an expat wherever
Yep.
I am. Because
Yep.
I'm always just like a mixture of things.
Yeah.
And like you said, you kinda just have to accept that and roll with it to kind of find your inner peace.
Yeah, yeah. The moment you, like, really start to, like, overanalyze it, like, I have cousins in, like, Texas and California and stuff, and, like, even they had a totally different immigrant child experience in the US. Like, I grew up in, New Jersey with a bunch of Italians and, like, Irish kids, and they never saw that. It was other Mexican immigrants, right? So, even that other side of the border experience in 2 different parts of the country were so, so different, you know?
Yeah. It's very different, so you kinda just have to embrace that, which actually is why I think what you guys are doing is so great because America is such a melting pot of cultures, and so many different people from all over the world are there, and kind of having such diverse experiences that not having diversity represented in all fields is kind of like, morally, ethically, it's wrong, but also it's just you're losing market because
Yeah.
you're only appealing to a very small portion of the people that are actually living in your area if you're
Yeah.
not, kind of, like, reaching all of the communities that you probably have.
Exactly, exactly, and it's not like 20 years ago, you might have the excuse of like, "Oh, it's so hard to reach everybody." No, we could do that now. Like, we live in like a digital world where like your Instagram feed is totally different than mine, right? Like, you can
Yeah.
target ads based on your behavior and your location and your language. Like, we could get so creepy in the segmentation that it's not an excuse anymore. Like, anybody, this is a direct call out to all businesses. Anybody who's like, it's too expensive, it's too much work, they don't understand the value. So they're never going to understand that like, a simple investment and in broadening your audience is going to bring back all the returns. But also, you can't ignore it. Like, Latinos are the fastest growing population. I'll speak about New England, for example. Like, you have your Cape Verdean community, your West African community. Like, they will continue to, be more dominant in politics and business and in consuming. To ignore them is just like it's putting your head in the sand, right? You're not going to
Yeah.
have the same audience forever.
Yeah, and you're not gonna grow your market, you're not gonna grow anything if you're kind of just ignoring them and appealing to a certain audience, and I think what you said about kind of the speaking for you,
Yeah.
thing really resonates with me because I feel like a lot of times when I see projects that are not involving Latinos, but are using Latino culture, to me are so obvious just because of how, um disconnected they are
Yep.
from how it actually is. I don't know if you saw everything that happened with Emilia Perez lately, the
Yeah.
drama
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Um,
That's messy.
yeah, it
Like
was
everything
messy.
about it.
Yeah, it was so bad, and I think it's just from a marketing perspective, it was really a failure of just not surrounding yourself with the right people. It was I watched the movie. It was extremely offensive. I agree. I mean, I didn't particularly like it, but I do think that it was because it was obviously made for people who only understood Mexico from stereotypes,
Yeah.
specifically stereotypes involving the sensitive topic that it was
Mm.
approaching.
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't even watch it. I'm like, listen, this is I could fill in the gaps and understand that this was, like, completely tone deaf, that this was not built for us, by us, and,
No.
it's honestly gonna stress me out just watching it. I'm just gonna be, like, so heated afterwards and, like, why? I'm gonna protect my peace and just, like, let people argue on the internet for it.
Yeah, no, I watched it because I wanted to kind of be able to, like, properly say
Porque
something
somos
about it.
chismosos, you gotta know. You gotta definitely
Yeah,
put it
exactly.
there.
Yeah, so to Mulsa, 'cause when I saw it, but when I saw it, I was like, "This is horrible." It was torture, and I could definitely feel that where it's just, and I do feel that, like you said, like with the Super Bowl and all that, where like a lot of these ads and things that you get, they're so over the top. I mean, I've gotten marketing for things from El Salvador, which is like that have sombreros and Mexican things. I'm just like, I'm not from Mexico. You're
Yeah.
just stereotyping me into
Yeah.
this culture because you think that all Latinos, we're just walking around singing mariachi all the time,
Yeah.
which is not, we're not the same, right?
Exactly. And, like, neither are Mexicans, you know what I mean? Like, we're out here, so culturally diverse. I have a funny story about, like, I was on the radio one time in Rhode Island, talking about some campaign we were doing, and, Rhode Island's heavily, Dominican, right? It's a lot of Dominicans, a lot of Colombians, a lot of Venezuelans, um, and I was on the radio for maybe, like, 10 seconds, and I was talking about this whole thing, and, like, I'm giving my pitch in Spanish, of course, and the guy, like, takes his headset off, and he's like, "Papi," he's like, "No." He's like, "Nobody will understand you." And I was like, "What? Like, what do you mean?" I'm, like, speaking in my most proper formal Spanish, and he's like, "No, dude, like, listen to us, like, we're hardcore Dominicans, like, they will immediately detect que eres mexicano, that you're Mexican, and, like, it'll be disconnected, and they won't do the thing that you're trying to get them to do. Have us do it, we'll record the piece for you, and, like, we'll get the message out." And we did, and that was, like, a check for myself who lives in the space, who does inclusion work around, like, "Damn, this is my own literal bias around how I talk and say things," right? A simple thing like popote, right, is what we say in
Yeah.
Mexico, but every other Latin American country has, like, 7 different words for straw. It's those little things where, like, it gets even more segmented the deeper you go into it.
Yeah, we say pajilla, we don't say popote.
Yeah, and that's wrong, Daniela.
Oh, I don't like I know a lot of, like, the Mexican slang because I, like, there's a lot of Mexican media that we consume, but it's weird. I can't say popote. It doesn't flow naturally for me.
Yeah. That's how I feel like when I hear voz, right? Like when I when I hear
Ah,
somebody
yeah.
say voz, like it makes me feel a certain way, and it brings me back to like being in elementary school in the US and like being taught like Castilian, Spain Spanish, and being like, "No, that's not right." Like I've never heard that before. Like,
So,
full
yeah, we
Spanish, never heard that.
we use vos in El Salvador in Central America, I think. A lot of
Yeah,
us, we use vos instead of tú,
yeah,
and, for us, it's the same thing. So, it's like it's weird because
yeah.
if you would treat me like tú eres, I feels too proper. I'm just like, "That's so polite."
So
It
funny.
Yeah, it's weird, but like you said, yeah, these are, like, nuances that probably someone who is not from Latin America is probably not gonna understand or kind of fully be able to adapt to if they're not in the
Yeah,
I don't even think it has to do with the professionalism as much as it just has to do with the cultural overall
yeah.
understanding of things.
Yeah, it's so funny. I love it. My brother-in-law's Puerto Rican, and, like, anytime he says something that's, like, some term I've never heard before, like, voy a cógeme una coca, right? Un agua. I'm like, coger is not like that's an expletive in Mexico, right? And
Yeah.
he's like, just grab me something, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
like, it's it could even be offensive if you just don't know the cultural nuance between, each language and, country.
Yeah, for sure. It's the same thing. I've learned a lot of Puerto Rican slang from reggaeton,
Yeah,
honestly.
yeah,
From like, because it's like with the boom that it's had in the last few years, you kind of have to learn it to understand what the hell you're singing,
yeah,
unless you're just,
exactly. Do
yeah.
I even know what this is? Like, do I relate with Bad Bunny?
Yeah, no, and I have a Puerto Rican friend that I always ask her, like, "What does this mean?" And then she's always like, "Oh, he's trying to say this." And stuff like that. I'm like, "Okay, that makes more sense."
I love that.
Um,
I love us.
so yeah, I think that that's great that you're able to kind of include a lot of that into former marketing campaign into current marketing campaigns because I do think that formerly I haven't really seen that, especially with American marketing, which is insane considering how much diversity there is. What I am wondering is, have you actually encountered people or, you don't have to name anybody, but have you ever encountered situations where you feel like there's racism or pushback against that and there's like a narrative that's trying to get pushed that is a little bit less inclusive?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's happening right now, you know? We started our business in 2020, right? Right before the pandemic. So, right when we started, like, a lot of things had to adapt, right? Like, we had to we this was, like, the boom of George Floyd, a lot more, like, DEI language was coming out, and people were, like, all in on inclusivity, right? And look what happened. In 5 years, like, half of it was bullshit, half of it
Yeah.
never really mattered, and half of it's going away from, external forces. And right now, a lot of the conversations I'm having with, especially with our nonprofit clients and partners who are afraid for the funding, afraid for the safety of their communities, like they're asking us, should we remove terms like equity and diversity from our website? We had one organization that we work with out of Boston that just straight up reached out to us and like this made me want to cry. Like they called me and they're like, hey, they do immigrant work. They do a lot of, work with refugees and resettling and all that. And they're like, "Hey, we just had to lay off all of our staff, right? We are totally financially volatile right now. A lot of the money we were getting were federal grants. Um, Even our private donors are afraid to give us money because they just don't know what's going on. So we had to lay off all of our staff. And can you shut down our website? We're gonna delete our social media, and can you help us, like, remove us from Google, basically? That's the opposite of what we do. Like, our job is to shout you out from the rooftops, get you to the first listing on Google, build you a beautiful site, build you a beautiful marketing campaign, and now you're asking us to undo all of that and then go deeper to, like, put you into hiding? Like, that's terrible, right? And, that's the reality of, like, what some of our partners are facing right now. But on the racism side, on the deliberately ignoring and not being inclusive side, like, we've gotten those, and luckily, we're at the stage in our business growth where we could say, "Hey, we're not a fit for you." If you're telling us and it's not even like, there's no beef. If you're just telling us like, we don't want to include certain communities or like, we don't want queer representation in this because we're whatever. We're very comfortable just saying, "Hey, that's not who we are at our core." And there are plenty of other organizations who are happy to do whatever it is that you're asking. We've only gotten like one truly like real ignorant, real racist, like, we need you to do this performative thing for us because we messed up. They did something that was damaging a certain community that was, affecting people's livelihood. And they wanted to apologize for it and do it through a marketing campaign and outreach. But it was hollow. It was all spin, right? It was all PR.
Yeah.
And could we do it? Of course we could. But that's not what we're in the business, right? We're not gonna be out here like lying to our people, lying to community, to, make you look good. That's not who we are.
I'm yeah, I know, and I feel like because your brand is also just so intricately related to your Latino background, it would just end up being worse that you're associating yourself
Oh
with
yeah.
someone that's been, like insensitive. To your point about, immigration, I did want to ask you, so I feel like with everything that's going on in the United States with immigration, with deportations, with all of this
Mhm.
politically, um regardless of the political affiliations, I imagine that it is affecting a lot, the industry.
Mhm.
I can imagine that because I feel like I've seen this kind of reluctance of brands to, position themselves in
Yep.
it and to kind of put a voice out there to either defend it or even be against it.
Yep.
They're trying to stay neutral, and what I've noticed more is just kind of brands just to not market to that sector of the population to just kind of mute
Yep.
it out 'cause it
Yep.
feels like just gonna keep deporting people.
Yep.
I don't know, I wonder what your take is on that because I feel like it really is probably affecting everything.
It's huge. Yeah. And that goes back to my point of like a lot of these initiatives were just they were just hollow. They were artificial, it's performative. Because all those organizations and we'll bleep these out, like some of the big box stores and some of the big product giants, like they were a year ago putting out like Somos Latinos and like Somos Inclusivos and like they were putting out stuff like that. Or like, every summer they would have their pride merchandise and their pride campaigns and Black History Month, they would do this and that. And what happened? It's February, they were silent, right? They haven't done anything for women's history. Like they're pulling back because they know they can and because they know they never really had to. It was strictly just to appeal folks and to look good and maybe to, quiet any of the people who might be upset of them not doing anything, right? I mean, you remember 2020, like everybody was blacking out their profile photos and like
Yeah, I
hashtag
remember.
George Floyd, like every single business, like a domino, just quickly reacted to it. They hired DEI leaders, right? They did all the things, and then when they realized, like, oh, this might not be like helping our bottom line, but it's the right thing to do, they were very quick to backtrack on. So, like right now, we have organizations who like completely did away with like their all of their ESG groups or their affinity groups, their sponsorship of certain cultural events. And like all we could do as a neutral party is call them out. It's just say like, hey, remember literally a couple months ago, like it wasn't years ago. And if they choose to ignore it, then that shows, who they are. But it's all over the place right now. Folks are just like backtracking on their word. Whether they want to or not too. Some folks are just like you said, like frozen in the fright, freeze, whatever. They're just frozen and not doing anything. But we hear that. Like, silence is violence. We know that if you're not out here taking a position, you're supporting whatever is oppressing folks. So all those companies who are just choosing to like put their head in the sand and just ignore the whole thing, we know where they're at. We know who like they're responding to.
Yeah, and I feel like, I mean, I've kind of heard the advice of people say, like, it's better to not position yourself because then you're not gonna piss people off, but I think you're gonna piss people off regardless of what you do. And us, like, for us, when this topic is very deep for us because we obviously are, like, we are Latin American, I don't know any Latino person that doesn't have family that is immigrant in America or is an immigrant themselves. That's kind of just how the
Yeah.
connection is. So it's obviously a deep topic for people like us. So it's like I can't kind of sit there and be like, yeah, you staying neutral is the right thing because
Yeah.
for me it's not the right thing.
Yeah, Daniela,
Um,
this is what's gonna get me beef from other Latinos, right? Um,
yeah,
in the previous, in this most recent election, there were this was probably the most splintered Latinos have ever been. And like we just said it a
yeah,
million ways. We know Latinos are not a monolith. We're so diverse, politically, whatever, socially. But we did see a huge percentage of Latinos shifting their affiliation to the right. And the main thing was immigration is not a priority for me. So when certain political parties are saying immigration, they're like, oh, it doesn't affect me. Maybe I'm Puerto Rican and I have my citizenship by birth, right? Maybe I'm Cuban and I'm here con asilo and tengo mis papeles. I have my papers. I'm good. Maybe I'm Venezuelan and I have all of this taken care of because of asylum. What's happening now, right? A lot of this is now blowing up in a lot of our community's face to let them know, to remind them that they're not protected. They've never been protected and they won't be protected. Like you're seeing Venezuelans get deported. You're seeing Cubans get deported. You're seeing Puerto Ricans who are getting stopped and frisked, right? You're seeing indigenous folks, Native Americans getting stopped by ICE. Like we're so backwards and we've moved so far away from like reality that all of those Latinos who were saying, "Oh, it's not affecting me," are now wondering when will it affect me and how is it going to affect me, right? Because we all have a degree of separation to the issue.
yeah, no, and like recently Venezuela and Cuba, they had like they're not allowed entry in the country anymore.
Yep.
Just straight up, they just got banned from entering. And what I don't know is if like people from Venezuela and Cuba that are already in the States are going to get their green cards or citizenships revoked because I know that they're doing that too.
Yeah.
Where they're just revoking citizenship for anybody, like even international students. I always thought international students and like people who were in the workforce legally were not gonna get affected because usually it's a pretty solid defense of like,
Yep.
I'm in school or I'm at work. But we're seeing even that kind of just like nobody's safe anymore. So like you said, so I think at least for me, like I think as a brand, you do have to position yourself because at the end of the day, that's the type of audience that you want to
Yep.
have, right? Like I wouldn't want people who support that to support what I do.
Yep.
That's my perspective, but I feel like a lot of brands are just thinking more of like getting the largest amount of people as possible, and it doesn't matter.
No, and listen, and when we started this, we were not so vocal. We were actually super safe. I started this with my wife, and we were trying to just be like a mom and pop creative shop, do a little bit of branding, a little bit of design, and work with, the big brands. That was our goal. And we quickly realized like the need is elsewhere, right? It's small businesses, minority owned businesses, women owned businesses, nonprofits. Like we knew we needed to work there. And when we started to rebrand ourselves, and like really take a stance back in 2020, we had a lot of folks who were like, even our peers, like other marketing agencies who were like, don't do that, be careful, like watch that language, anti-racist, like don't lean into that. And I remember just being so like insulted by it, but also just like I laughed it off. I'm like, y'all don't understand. Like we have the power to do that. And our nonprofit partners can't they can't do that. So in a lot of ways, like we're speaking on their behalf and representing a lot of the values that they can't even show up with. Like they're constantly masking their true selves. And we're not going to lose grants. We might lose a client or two, and that's okay because we were never meant to work together. If you go on our site and you look at that and you feel a certain way, you just self disqualified me and saved, a whole wasted scope that I put together for you, right? Or a sales call. Now you just immediately qualify or disqualify.
Yeah, for sure. I think like you said, I think that that's great because not everybody can afford to speak up as much as they would like to. So if you are in a place where you can financially do that, where you are not afraid of the backlash, obviously not doing it is kind of worse than actually doing it.
Yeah, and, like, not bringing us down, like, a serious ending to this because this is a lot of fun, I love talking to you about this, but, like, there's serious repercussions to it, like, I am about to go back to the US for some events in April, and, like, now I'm concerned about, like, even though I have my blue passport, my US passport, like, what kind of optics will that be coming in? I have tattoos, soy Mexicano, like, there's a lot of things that might flag me. Will it also flag that I have LinkedIn activity that's constantly talking about, the damages of immigration policy like this or DEI work or whatever. Like, am I putting myself at risk? Right. Those are the kinds of things that I'm like very seriously talking about at the dinner table with my wife now,
Yeah.
because it's not just us putting out a social media post about how we feel and our values. Like now there's serious, repercussions.
No, yeah, it's definitely scary because I also feel the same thing. I mean, I have opinions, but it's hard to kind of put them out there and kind of have your face and voice related to it because you don't know how that's gonna come back and bite you.
Yeah.
Um, Especially when it comes to traveling, jobs, whatever it is.
Yeah.
You have your agency, but I mean, for me, like I do have the same kind of concerns where I totally understand where you're coming from because it's a lot different than if I were to just be the white person talking about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. It's a
that's
different.
I mean, that's a very, I think, great note. Well, not great, but very serious note to end this podcast on. Because unfortunately we are running out of time. But it was great having you. I think we didn't talk too much about marketing, but I think we had a great conversation anyways. And right before we end it, I do want to give you the space to promote anything that you want to promote. If anything that we spoke about today resonated with our audience, if anybody would like to work with you, floor is yours.
Yeah, I feel like I'm on hot ones. Like I have to look at this camera and this camera. No, I mean, I don't have a specific pitch. You can check out our website. We are the most hypocritical agency because we have no active content on our social profiles. We have no active content on our website. Like we're like in the trenches of trying to support our partners. So sometimes we forget, to put the oxygen mask on our website and put up some new content. But you can check us out there, the Nunez.co. You can check out doubleimpact.com, which is a little bit more of our bilingual content. Follow me on LinkedIn, Ray Nunez. You can find me there. I'm the first result. But that's really where I just get to like vent. It's a big version of what we just talked about here. I do lean into marketing information there too. So if anybody really does want to hear some marketing hot takes, I got plenty of them there.
Awesome. Yeah, I will be adding the links to the description of this video so that people watching can click and go access them easily. Guys, you know the drill. Subscribe, follow us, comment, share everything. Thank you, Ray, for being here. It was so great to have you on the episode today.
Thank you, Daniela. I appreciate you.
I appreciate you as well. Guys, I will see you on the next episode. Bye.
You've been listening to Fully Managed, brought to you by Penji. Check out the show notes to learn more about today's guest, and to learn more about Penji, the human-first creative subscription service, head over to penji.co. And by the way, if you're still listening, it would mean the absolute world to us if you were to share this podcast with a friend, and of course, subscribe.